Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live on this Monday afternoon. It's so great to be back. Thank you for being here with us, and we're not letting you down. We got a great show today. The second hour, there's a brand new book called Real Philosophy for Real People from Father Robert McTeague. It's for Ignatius Press, and we saw this book and we said we just got to do a show on that because the Catholic Church for centuries and centuries and centuries, from its very earliest days, stressed the importance of philosophy in order to get the mind thinking clearly, even before doing theology. So that's probably the main thing that we have trouble with in the modern world is thinking clearly. So second hour, some thoughts on getting your thoughts together by studying philosophy. And it's not that horrible dry stuff. It's really good, fun, challenging philosophy with Father Robert McTeague. Second hour. First hour, you may not have noticed this. You may be one of those blessed few who has not noticed that it's been kind of a tough year. 2020 has been a little bit of a tough one, and it just keeps going. It just gets weirder and weirder, and not just weirder, but sometimes it's kind of discouraging. And so we want to talk about having some peace in the storm of this year. And of course, the man we go to is the man who literally wrote the book on worries and many other books, Dr. Greg Popcak. Dr. Popcak, thanks for being with us.
I'm happy to be here.
I should also let the listener know, yes, this is the same Dr. Greg Popcak that hosts More to Life mornings on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio with his wife, Lisa. And he's a radio professional, so I am going to take a nap for the next hour. You just call with your questions for Dr. Popcak. 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884.
He really is going to take a nap. He's got his pillow. He's got his little teddy bear, hot water bottle. It's actually kind of adorable.
It's Monday.
He's wearing a onesie.
Yeah, I just got out of bed. I'm wearing a onesie. That's not a visual you want to give people. Oh, man.
Winnie the Pooh onesie.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. It would be Winnie the Pooh, too. If I had a onesie, it would be Winnie the Pooh. None of these modern cartoon characters.
That's why people want to watch this on Facebook Live.
Right.
That's why we're recording it, so they can actually see what's going on.
Yes. Now I wear my Winnie the Pooh onesie under my collared shirt that I have to wear. I'm glad. I guess humor is one of the strategies, but these worries sometimes, what do you tell people? I know people say to you, I am struggling. Please help me. What do you say?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of different reasons why people might be struggling, whether that's because of all the things going on in the news or just the way life has changed and our loss of rituals, loss of connection with others. People could be struggling for the same reasons they were struggling before this crazy year happened. So, the answer to that question really depends a lot on the specifics of what a person might be going through. But, I think the most important thing to keep in mind, and I talk about this in the book, Unworried, A Life Without Anxiety. People see that subtitle and they think, come on, that what kind of a come on is that? A life without anxiety. That's right. ridiculous, silly promise. So I make a distinction in the book between anxiety and concerns. And a concern is a rational, healthy response to a problem. We see that there's an issue. We, step back, maybe take it to prayer, hopefully, gather our resources, look for support, make a plan, and address it. That's a healthy response to a concern. Anxiety is when you see a problem and that's all you can see. And the problem becomes so big that it actually separates you from your connection to God, from your connection to the support of others, from your connection to your best self. And all you can do is stare at the problem and say, there's a problem. It's a bit like standing in the middle of the railroad tracks and watching a train coming at you and thinking, how am I ever going to lift this train before it gets to me, right? Instead of thinking, if I just step 5 feet to the left or the right, I'll be okay. No, I'm going to stand right here in the middle of the tracks, seeing this thing coming down. I've got to figure out how to lift this train. Right. That's the difference between a concern and an anxiety. If you're standing in the middle of the tracks, you should be concerned about it. There's a problem, right?
Yeah.
But you make the plan to walk away from the tracks and get out of the way of the train. Anxiety has you rooted in place, staring at the train coming at you at full tilt, thinking, I've got to figure out how to lift this thing. How am I supposed to do that?
Right. We avoid politics as much as we can here, but I have to say, there are people who I truly love and respect who believe that if Donald Trump wins the election, this is a catastrophe, possibly the end of the republic. And people who I love and respect who believe deeply that if Joe Biden wins, this is the end of the republic, possibly the end of history. And you think one of those is going to have to face that, and maybe like prepare now. Like it's an election; it could go either way. Like maybe I don't know. What do you do with that massive political anxiety we have at the moment?
And you've got there are certain bad thinking habits that we can all fall into, right? And this is drawn out of the research in cognitive therapy, but I'm also going to tie it into, in our Catholic spiritual tradition, the work that St. Ignatius Loyola did in Discernment of Spirits, where he talks about consolations and desolations. So, for example, in the telecounseling practice that we have at CatholicCounselors.com, we integrate cognitive therapy with Ignatian spiritual discernment. And there are certain bad thinking habits that are also desolations, temptations from the enemy, if you will, that cause us to approach a concern in an unhealthy way that leads to anxiety. So the two categories of bad thinking habits, or if you will, lies, that we believe are in the face of these kinds of things you're describing, are catastrophizing, which is the kind of, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world as we know it kind of thing. And then there's polarization, where there's only one extreme or the other. There's nothing could possibly be in the middle. It's either going to be, disaster on this side or disaster on that side.
Right.
So we've got to challenge those false thoughts, not only because they're bad thinking habits, but because they're also temptations from the enemy to get us to be ineffective. The things that we're concerned about, when somebody says, oh, if person X wins the election, the whole world is over, whichever side you happen to be on about that.
Right.
What they're really saying is, I have some concerns that I'm afraid will not be respected if person X gets into the administration.
Sure.
And so the answer to that is, so again, if you're going to make the distinction between a concern and anxiety, it's legitimate to have that concern, to say, this concern of mine may not be respected if so-and-so gets in. But whether this person or that person gets in, my job is the same. I need to advocate for those concerns and make sure that those concerns are being heard and addressed.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I can have a rational perspective on this and say, okay, I'd be disappointed if so-and-so got in, but my job is the same whether they're in or the other guy's in. I still have to advocate for these concerns to say this is a legitimate problem that needs to be addressed. So what is God asking me to do in this situation? And then I have to focus my energy on that problem. Where it becomes anxiety is when I start thinking about how can I control all these political factors that I have no direct influence over, and oh my gosh, my concerns are going to be completely railroaded because so-and-so is going to, and I find myself in a very powerless position where the anxiety just consumes me, and I fall into that catastrophizing and polarizing.
That focus on what God wants me to do, it seems to me extremely productive. Like that's where, like, he does have a task for you today, or maybe even more than one task for you today, and part of your job in life is to discern what does he want from me, and in that way, you're not just reducing your own anxiety, you're actually living a life that's centered on God. You're freeing yourself to live a life that's centered on God.
That's right. And, so getting over anxiety, ironically, has very little to do with addressing the anxiety, right? Because the more I'm, what's wrong with me that I'm anxious? I just need to stop being anxious. Let me take a deep breath so I'm not anxious anymore. Right?
Yeah,
and the more I focus on the anxiety,
right,
the worse it actually gets. The anxiety is actually a symptom of a concern that I'm afraid I have no control over. So if I can step back, identify the concern, and then begin to connect with God, begin to connect with the resources God has given me, the support and love that people provide around me, and really reflect on what is my best self? How can I respond to this concern in a manner that really allows me to be, my best? And I can focus on making a plan for making those things happen. the anxiety decreases. The concern might still be there, but I'm not going to be as anxious about it.
Right. Dr. Greg Popcak is our guest. He's the host with his wife, Lisa Popcak, of More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak mornings on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. 888-318-7884 is our number here. His book that we will make reference to throughout this hour is, among his many other books, the one we'll reference today is called Unworried, A Life Without Anxiety. And especially in these times of very high anxiety, if you'd like to call and talk about a fully healthy human Christian response to worries, anxieties, upsets, whether they're yours or someone close to you, 888-318-7884 is the number.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Exorcisms on Monday and Rapture on Wednesday. That's the calendar this week on Catholic Answers Focus. The official exorcist of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis joins us on Monday to discuss the life of an exorcist, what training he gets, and then some stuff that's probably too scary to mention here. Then on Wednesday, we ask Carlo Broussard about the end times, particularly the rapture. Is there any chance that rapture might be real? Catholic Answers Focus is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Get all the details and past shows at CatholicAnswersFocus.com.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
EWTN is now on Twitter. Get short, timely messages from EWTN on your computer or cell phone. It's easy to stay up to date on a wide variety of topics. Pro-life news, Vatican announcements, catechesis, apologetics, the latest EWTN programming, and more. You can link to EWTN on Twitter from our homepage or go to twitter.com/EWTN. At work, at home, at school, and on the road. Stay connected to your world with EWTN's Twitter page.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Dr. Greg Popcak, one of the world's sensible people here with us today. Always enjoy talking with Greg Popcak. The book we're referencing is Unworried, A Life Without Anxiety. You can find that wherever you get your books, I'm fairly certain. Our number here is 888-318-7884, and we're talking about, what Dr. Popcak does through his in his professional life, whether on the radio or in counseling or with various counselors that are in his employ, is take a scientific approach that's also cognizant of the spirit and the faith element in order to help people with situations like anxiety, worry, upset. And you don't have to lift the train. You can just step out of the way of the train. I'm never going to forget that image. When I'm trying to lift the train. Bunch of folks on the line for you already. And it's because I am in my Winnie the Pooh onesie and ready to take a nap, I just want to go to calls. Can I do that?
Fine by me.
All right, Jenny in Council Bluff, Iowa, you are up first. Jenny's listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Jenny, your question for Dr. Greg Popcak.
Yeah, my daughter is suffering from teenage angst and anxiety. What are some techniques we can use to help her? For instance, last week she had an outright panic attack because she couldn't find the right mask to wear with her cheer uniform, and the whole household had to come to a stop to find it. Okay. And we just could not bring her back to reason. How do you help someone in that situation?
When you say bringing her back to reason, so tell me a little bit about what you tried to do, first of all.
Well, we tried to say, where was the last place you saw it? Mm-hmm. Have you checked your, going through kind of a checklist to give her something to focus on where it might be. Okay. And she just was, but I have to find it right now. And
she wasn't in a place where she could hear any of that. Yeah.
I have find it right now. And it just escalated from there because we were trying to cook dinner. And so, like I said, the whole household had to come to a screeching halt to help her find this thing.
And I'm assuming this happens pretty regularly, or was this a one-off?
It happens more regularly than I would like. She is very much schedule-oriented, and if something goes off schedule, she has trouble adapting to that.
Okay.
So we're trying to come up with ways, but when she gets into that point, she starts panicking because she's anxious, because she knows she's anxious because she can't find it, and like you say,
Right.
there's that spiral. So how do you bring someone out of that?
Okay, so a lot of that has to do, unfortunately, it's a little bit like saying, how can you help somebody lift the train when they're already trying to lift the train? Like, when you're in the middle of the panic attack, that's the worst time to try to start it. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I'm going to try to focus on how do we prevent that kind of thing from happening again, and then I'll talk a little bit about what you can do if it does happen. Okay, so the first thing, you want to talk to her when she's not in the middle of this panic attack or any of this anxiety. And there are two things that I want to do. First, the reason this happens, okay, is that there's something that triggers her, and what her emotional brain overwhelms her thinking brain. So we have basically three brains in our head. The cortex is our thinking brain, and the limbic system is your emotional brain. And then you have another part that controls mostly your body. Okay, so her emotional brain gets so stimulated that it completely floods her thinking brain. And if you were to take a functional MRI picture of her brain at that point, you'd see that her thinking brain was like dark, and her emotional brain was lit up like a Christmas tree. And any attempt to try to reason with her can and will be used against you. Okay, so any attempt to try to say, honey, it's okay, just take a breath and calm down, and it's going to be fine, and we're just going to find this mess, it'll just provoke her even further. So the key in that point really is to kind of, like I said, prevention is worth a pound of cure. So what do you do to prevent it? First of all, you kind of walk her through that idea that when she's in that heightened state, her thinking brain is turned off, and she really can't solve her way out of a paper bag at that point. She can only react to things, because the emotional brain can only fight, flee, or freeze. It can't think and problem solve and reason. It can't remember anything either. It can just react. So what we have to do in general is kind of walk her through. In the book, we talk about this emotional temperature scale. And just to kind of do a short version here, when you're at about a 4 or 5, you're in good shape. You get up to about a 6, then you start feeling the adrenaline and cortisol dripping into your bloodstream. At a 7, your brain starts shutting down, and your nonverbal filters go off, where you start showing outward signs of agitation and irritation. You get up to about an 8, that's where your verbal filters start to collapse, and you start kind of either blaming or lecturing or running off at the mouth, or even just shutting down. At a 9, that's when you start really kind of yelling and screaming and hyperventilating. And at 10, that's when your kind of physical filters collapse, and you start either slamming doors and other kinds of things like that. You can't really effectively solve any kind of a problem if you get up over a 7 on that temperature scale, which is actually a lot lower than most people think, because most people don't even realize that they're all that upset or anxious until they get up to an 8. That's the first place they're usually ready to admit it. So you got to help her take her emotional temperature throughout the day. When when she first wakes up, at lunchtime, mid-afternoon, dinner time, where is she on that scale of 1 to 10? And it's not how she feels, it's how she's acting. And we have kind of behavioral markers that go along with each of the 10 points in that emotional temperature scale in Unworried that you can kind of show her and help her pick out. The goal is to identify the emotional temperature and then ask, what's one small thing you can do, whatever your temperature is, to take it down a notch? Right? Because the goal here is to keep as much of a gap between where you're at and that 7 as possible. So if she's even at a 6, well, how can we bring it down to a 5? If she's at a 5, how can we bring it down to a 4? Because the more space you've got between where you're at and the 7 is, the more room you have to handle stress effectively. So that's number 1. Number 2, if she is starting to notice that her emotional temperature is going up, you want to kind of come up with a list of things with her that she can do to take that down. Can she, pray, take some deep breaths, ask for a hug? I mean, simple things that help. One very simple thing is just slowing down. Intentionally slowing down our speech, intentionally kind of watching for my hand reach for my glass of water instead of just grabbing at it. That actually taps the brakes on the slow down nervous system, which is sort of like, how in a car you have a gas pedal and you have a brake pedal. Well, when her gas pedal gets stuck, by slowing herself intentionally down, she can tap her brake pedal and start to slow her brain down a little bit. So those are some tricks that she can use outside of the panic attack. The reason I'm setting that all up is because in the panic attack, her whole focus is on the mask. I got to find the mask. What happens if I don't find the mask? The world's going to end if I don't find it. And the problem is the more externally focused she is, the less control she has. So you've got to, in that panic attack, get her to focus back in on getting control of her body and helping her understand, okay, honey, we're going to find the mask, but your first job is to take some deep breaths and calm down. But I can't calm down. I have to find the mask. Take some deep breaths and breathe with me. Come here, let me hold you for a second, and let's just breathe together through this. I love you, and it's going to be okay. And you're helping her get control of her body as opposed to focusing in on finding the thing, right? And the more you're able to do that, the better. But it's going to take some talking to her beforehand, which is why I kind of set this all up. So I apologize for the length on this, but that's that you're going to have to do that work beforehand to help her get to the place where she can handle the panic attack more effectively.
What do you think, Jenny?
Okay. I think that's good. Where it's just, she's a teenager and some of this is new to us and it catches us off guard and then things escalate.
So what I'd like you to do as a follow-up is to pick up a copy of Unworried and go through it together with her. Read a chapter at night together. All right, and start talking through some of those techniques and trying them out. And if you find that it's getting, if you're finding that you're having a hard time working through it on your own, then go ahead and look us up at CatholicCounselors.com, and we'll hook you up with one of our associates. Okay?
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenny.
Terrific. Thank you so much for the call.
Our number 888-318-7884. We're talking about finding and maintaining peace amidst the storm. You might refer to Jesus in the storm, who did not have his peace disturbed in the least, and it was turned out to be unnecessary for the apostles to have their peace disturbed as well. We do feel ourselves, we feel the ship rocking like we are in a storm this year, and waves keep hitting, and so we thought a perfect time to ask Dr. Greg Popcak to come on. He is the founder of CatholicCounselors.com. You can go there to CatholicCounselors.com, find out all about what they do there. And he's the author of the book, Unworried, A Life Without Anxiety. You can call with your questions for yourself or for a loved one, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Roger in San Antonio, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio is next. Hi, Roger. You got a question for Dr. Popcak?
Yes, I do. Great show. I love you guys.
Thank you.
Yes, my son, my 10-year-old son, he's dealing with anxiety and panic attacks as of recently, within a year. I do have anxiety and OCD, panic attacks. So I'm trying to see how to deal with it with him, and sometimes it might agitate mine as well. But trying to focus on him, and particularly when he goes to a restaurant or when we go to a store and he says there's too many people, that's when most of the time it happens.
Does he go to school? Like, is he ever in public
yet.
when you're not around?
No, because they're on the online learning, so that's why I'm worried. So we've been training him, taking him out, and so sometimes he'll just freak out. And
well, what about before this year? He's 10 years old, so he must have. Was he in school before? Were you guys homeschooling or what?
Yeah, no, he was in public school before. Mm-hmm.
And he handled it okay before?
Yes. He still exhibited. It wasn't just because I was the pandemic, because he would exhibit panic attacks outside of school, like in open spaces. But at school, he never said that he had one. But he's had them in just open space. Even when there's nobody around, he's in open spaces for some reason.
And so right now, what are you guys doing about it? When he starts to feel that way, how do you handle it?
Well, I tell him to breathe and to pray. But I know yesterday we took him. He was having a panic attack. I started talking to him, and he was tired because I was listening to the earlier call. When I was trying to talk to him, he was like, "Don't talk. It makes it worse." So he was like, "Don't talk to me. Nobody talk to me. It's making it worse." So I'm trying to because we're in the middle of the store. So I was like, how do I? I'm trying to talk to him, but then he says don't talk to him because it makes it worse. So whatever reason, being around people or a store, it starts to get him, and he's like, oh, it's not going to go away, or it's not going to go away. He says he thinks it's not going to go away, and that he doesn't like when it, or what if it comes? Like, he's always like, oh, what if it happens again? So he doesn't like to go to the store even before we say.
Okay, so I want you to kind of walk. Now, there are other things that we can do, and if you find that this is a persistent issue, that you try some of these things out and they're not working well, then I'd like you to seek some professional help for him, and go with him. Don't ever send. Just a tip to all the listeners here: individual therapy for kids tends not to work as well as going with mom and dad. Because mom and dad really need to know how to support their kid in making these changes, and then be able to support those changes once you're done with the counseling. So, if these suggestions aren't cutting it, by all means, get him involved with some counseling. But I have some other suggestions, but it sounds like they're playing us up to the break.
Yeah, so we'll take a break, and you can come back and make those suggestions?
Perfect.
Okay, very good. We're talking about anxiety today. We're talking about finding peace and keeping peace in anxious times. You're welcome to call 888-318-7884.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, is one of the most courageous leaders in the church, known for his outspoken support of unborn life, Orthodox faith and morals, and reforming Catholic institutions. In his groundbreaking new book, Light and Leaven, he offers a forthright perspective on the state of the church today and calls on the lay faithful to meet its challenges boldly. Touching on topics including parish renewal, the centrality of the Eucharist, the need for prayer and silence in a noisy and distracted age, and the battle between good and evil in the church and world, Bishop Strickland's wise insights and evident love for souls will inspire and edify you. To order your copy of Light and Leaven, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Fear can be a part of everyone's life.
Is there something you're fearful of and have a hard time letting it go?
That's what we'll talk about tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on most of these EWTN stations.
Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Dr. Greg Popcak, our guest this hour, the host of More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak each weekday morning on the EWTN. It could be each morning. I don't know. It might be they might run it 10 times a day. I don't know. But I know it's on a lot of mornings.
We are definitely on 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central.
Okay. Well, at least Friday. I know that part. I have. Yeah. That's on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. And he's also the proprietor and founder of CatholicCounselors.com. We're talking a bit, we're taking some, our clues anyways, from his book, Unworried, A Life Without Anxiety today, as we try to talk through, especially from a Christian perspective, how to find and maintain peace when the world seems to be in a storm. Right now we're talking with Roger in Texas, who has a 10-year-old son who struggles terribly and seems to suffer intense emotion whenever in a crowd, like in a crowded restaurant, something like that. And you wanted to give some more suggestions. Dr.
Yeah.
Popcak.
Well, I hadn't started giving any at all, actually. So let's get started with you, Roger.
All right.
So all the things I said to the previous caller will work. So I'm going to encourage you to listen to the podcast or watch the video afterward to kind of catch up on that. But assuming that you've got some of those basics there, I'm going to throw out a couple of things specific for your son that would be additional tips. So, you said that whenever he's going out to a restaurant with you, he's sort of what's called phobophobic. He's afraid of the anxiety. What if I get afraid again? What if I feel panicked again? That kind of fear there. So I want to address that in a couple of different ways. First of all, before you go out, I'd like, when he says, how do I know? I'd like you to kind of walk him through and say, well, look, this has happened before, and it's possible that it's going to happen again. But what happens after it happens? Do you feel better? Yeah. And how do you feel better? What do you do to get there? So the point is, when you're anxious about something, you tend to focus on the piece of it that's anxiety producing. What if I feel anxious there? But there's a before where you're safe, and there's an after where you're safe, where the anxiety goes away. And it's certainly not pleasant to feel that anxiety, but walking him through it. Did you get through okay? I mean, did you pass out? No. Did you have to go to the hospital? No. So what happens after that? Well, I feel okay, and then we have dinner and we go home. Right. So if it does happen, and I hope it doesn't, but if it does, do you think that it would go kind of like that again? Well, probably. And even though I don't want it to happen, and I know it feels awful when it does, how would you feel if after it happened you could still be okay? Well, I guess that's okay. Right, so the point is you walk him through the fact that even though it's bad when it happens, it does pass, and things come back. So helping him be able to realize that there's an end point to this is really important. Another thing that you can do, and kids are great for this because their imaginations are so awesome, I want you to have him, well, there are two things actually. I want you to have him draw a cartoon of the experience. I want you to have him draw maybe at least 3 frames, right? The before he's going to the restaurant, when he's at the restaurant, and then after he's at the restaurant. Have him just draw those 3 frames of the cartoon. But once he's done with that, then I want you to have him draw it again. But this time, walking with him is a superhero that can take care of him. Now, that could be, some people that I work with will say, well, it's going to be St. Michael, right? Or other people might be the Blessed Mother. Some people will just say it's Superman, right? The point is you're just engaging the kid's imagination. Who's going to stand with him and protect him and take care of him while he goes through that? And have him draw that story. Okay, so he's walking into the restaurant with this protector. He starts to feel scared, and what does that protector do to keep him safe and protect him in that situation? And how does he carry him through that? Draw the end of the story too. Kids love that kind of simple exercise where they can use their imagination to really see that they have power over that event. Now, in addition to that, everything I was saying before about kind of pulling him in close to you and just not so much talking through it with him, but just loving him, holding him close to you, breathing together. Let your heart rate speak to his heart rate. When we hug another person, we kind of airdrop our emotional state into their body. So their heart rate starts to sync up with our heart rate. Their respiration starts to sync up with our respiration. So the best thing to do when you're trying to comfort somebody who's having that kind of a panic, especially a kid, is just hold them close and rub their back and breathe with them. But these other kinds of exercises I suggested are things you can do when he's not in that situation that will help him engage his imagination to realize that, yes, it's bad when this happens, but it passes. And that's the thing to focus on.
Roger, I hope that is helpful to you. And I'll just say again that the website is CatholicCounselors.com for anyone who might feel like they could use some counseling help to work through these kinds of issues. CatholicCounselors.com. We're talking with Dr. Greg Popcak about his book, Unworried, A Life Without Anxiety. Can you have a life without anxiety without having some relationship with God?
I mean, I think it's a whole lot harder, because what if you look, what was the first panic attack in human history? right? After the fall, what did Adam and Eve do? They hid, right? They were afraid.
Right.
Suddenly they were confronted with the bigness of the universe and the smallness of them, and they felt completely overwhelmed, and they ran and they hid because they didn't know what else to do. And I think that was the first panic attack in human history, where suddenly separated from God, I realized how vulnerable I actually was, and that terrified me. So, and again, what causes anxiety, not so much the problems that happen to us, but the ability of our problems to separate us from God, from the love and support of others, and from our own best selves. And the more we can reestablish that connection with God, the love and support of others, and our best selves to make a plan to respond to it, the less anxiety we'll feel. We'll still have concerns, but the anxiety will dissipate.
888-318-7884, the number. Let's go to Martha in Fort Worth, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Martha, thank you so much for your call. Your question for Dr. Popcak.
Hi, my question is, ever since the pandemic, I have been very afraid and worried so much. I lost weight. I couldn't sleep. Now it's like a little bit less, but I am so afraid when my kids come home. I want them to wash their hands. I want to take my clothes, take a shower, and I'm just too worried. And then my son had COVID like a month ago, and now he feels panic attacks. Like he says he runs out of breath, and he worries that it might happen again to him. So I don't know what to tell him, because to begin with,
So let me ask you: how did your son recover well? Is he still? Because sometimes people will go on with this for months. So how is he doing now, physically?
He lost weight, and he was weak for a while, and now he says he plays football at the school. So now he says he's getting his strength back. But
okay, good. Okay, so what you're talking about here, I mean, your worst fear in some ways was realized, right, when your son got COVID, and the good news is he made it through the other side, and he's doing well, and I realize that not everybody can say that, but in your case, that was the case, and you had been exposed to it as well, because he's your son, and so you all made it through that. Now, the thing is, anxiety is our effort to get control over things we can't control. Right, so what happens in our head is that we'll say, there's a problem, I should do something about that. And then we immediately hear, but there's nothing I can do. But then I hear, but I have to do something, but there's nothing I can do. But I have to do something, but there's nothing I do. But I have to do something, but I have to... And then we start to spin out from there, okay? And the important thing to remember here is that grace is always in the situation, not in the imagination. All of the things that you are imagining could happen. That's what's causing the anxiety. What if this happens? What if this other thing happens? And it's true. Those things could happen. In fact, they did. Your son got sick. But by trying to focus so much on imagining all the horrible things that could happen so that I could get control of them, we actually remove ourselves from the grace of the present moment. Because God isn't giving us grace to deal with imaginary problems. He's giving us grace to deal with the real ones. So the question you want to ask yourself when you start getting so worked up is, what is Satan trying to distract me from right now? What is the thing that God wants me to do? Who is the person that God wants me to love? What is the thing that God wants me to take care of that Satan doesn't want me paying attention to? And that's why he's whispering in my spiritual ear all these fears of imaginary things that could happen but aren't happening right now, to distract me from the thing that God wants me to do, or the person that God wants me to love, or the problem that God does want me to address. And I want you to step back and refocus yourself on doing that thing and responding to those actual issues in front of you, all the while saying, look, I'm going to respond to this in a way that makes Satan sorry that he ever picked on me in the first place by trying to freak me out about all this other stuff. It's a matter of reorienting yourself to what God is asking you to do in the moment, instead of living in your imagination and trying to fight off those imaginary concerns. I realize that's easier said than done, but it's a matter of focusing yourself on what's in front of you instead of getting lost and spinning out in what you can't control.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martha. Appreciate the call. We have to take a quick break. There are lines open. If you'd like to call, 888-318-7884. We'll do our best to get you on with Dr. Greg Popcak. If you're on the line, just hang on. We'll get right back to you. It's Catholic Answers annual store-wide sale time. Hundreds of items at 10 to 25% off. Some up to 50% off. I actually don't understand that sentence. Hundreds of items at 10 to 25% off, some up to 50% off. That seems like two different things. But nonetheless, you figure it out. Ebooks, MP3s, CDs, books, DVDs, even our School of Apologetics. $5 flat rate shipping if you live within the continental United States. Visit shop.catholic.com right now and check out the deals.
Call us now with your question on Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
I just want to share that 5 years ago, my lovely warrior princess and saint of a wife and I decided to adopt a little girl through foster care. She is the perfect round out of our family of 3 boys and her. Yes, there are challenges. Very grateful today for all the blessings that he has shown our family.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
I love Mondays, Nick. It's always so good to be back here, especially when we got good guests like Dr. Greg Popcak. That implies that I guess some of the other guests are not good. I shouldn't have said it that way, but Dr. Greg Popcak is a delightful guest to have and very helpful. He's the author of he's the author of the book we're talking about, among many other things, Unworried: A Life Without Anxiety, and the host of More to Life, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. I don't know what time that is in Sydney, Australia. So, have you ever figured that out when you're on around the world?
Yeah, you know what? We have clients actually in Australia.
In Australia?
Yeah, it's like a 12-hour time difference. So, Sydney is
12-hour time. That means it's 10 p.m. You come on.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Glad it's a Monday. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's go back to the phones to save me from myself. Mary Alice in Columbus, Ohio, listening on St. Gabriel Radio. You are up next, Mary Alice. Your question for Dr. Greg Popcak.
Hey, neighbor in Columbus. I'm in Ohio, too.
Good afternoon.
Good to talk to you.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm in Ohio,
you're
too.
in Ohio?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
Oh, we're in Steubenville, Ohio.
Oh, I know where that is.
Yeah, and I know where Columbus is, too. So what's going on in Columbus, Mary Alice? How can we help you out?
Well, yeah. This past weekend, yesterday happened to be my birthday, and I was celebrating on Saturday, and I had an absolutely fantastic time on Saturday morning with a political event for Mr. Trump. That's beside the point. But I was all keyed up and having a great day.
Well, let's try to cover as much of your day as we can, though. I mean, don't leave anything out. We wouldn't want that.
Well, then after that event, and I was, like I say, it was just fabulous. And then I decided I had to stop at the health food store to pick up a couple of items that I thought I needed, but could have waited until maybe one day later this week. But anyway, I stopped in. I don't know how the conversation got started, but the gentleman behind the counter waiting on me, cash register deal, he's a non-believer, and he started in with me about numbers and numerology and all kinds of conspiracy stuff, and I'm thinking, okay,
Mary Alice, just listen. And then he made a few more comments, and I didn't go into overdrive, but, and I may have lost another soul for Christ, but.
You didn't respond well, so you didn't respond charitably to his skepticism.
There's more to this, because there happened to be, I have to give the guy credit. He did stop at one point and did begin to listen to a few things that I was saying. Well, then there was another customer in the shop who happened to overhear things. She is of some other Protestant non-denomination, I don't know what. She made the comment about me, because by this time I had revealed the fact that I'm Catholic, and she made the comment about, worshiping graven images. And this
was a great fun time for you, Mary Alice. So it didn't go well. What are you asking now, though? Where do things stand, and what's your question for us?
Am I under any obligation to straighten her that no, we don't worship graven images? And then she mentioned about the white man hanging on that cross.
I guess I'm trying to ask, how would you even go back and address this at this point? I mean, these are just random people that you kind of met, in a store. So I don't think you have any obligation to go and find them. Now, if these are people you're dealing with on a regular basis, then it would be a good idea not to necessarily set things straight, but to apologize if you feel like you were uncharitable in some way, to be in relationship with them where you could actually have a dialogue. But this was the worst possible way this conversation could have come up, and I don't think you have any obligation to go seek them out to apologize to them or set them straight at this point. It happened. It's regrettable. Learn from it and move on.
I'm glad it didn't turn into a riot, though. A lot of things have been turning into riots lately, and you give yourself credit there, Mary Alice. You didn't start rioting, so. But the thanks.
At least say that.
that's what I have to get to
now,
sometimes.
That's the new bar.
At least I didn't riot. All right. I give myself credit.
New normal.
Thanks, Mary Alice. I don't know if we were helpful to you or not, but thanks for the call. Jenny in Alabama, watching on YouTube Live. You are up next. Jenny, your question for Dr. Greg Popcak.
I was diagnosed with bipolar really young, when I was like 9, and I've had 2 suicide attempts. I was addicted to drugs really bad for a year, but Jesus saved me, like He found me. And I was raised Catholic. I left, and anyways, I was on my bipolar meds until the last 6 months or so, when I really had a breakthrough. Like, I quit smoking marijuana. Even after meth, I still smoke marijuana. I even quit smoking cigarettes, cold turkey. I had some really scary experiences with some bad things, like evil things. But again, like, I had a breakthrough, and I feel like I don't need my medication.
Okay.
Now, there have been witnesses to these things that have seen different things, and it's kind of a testimony in and of itself. I smoked for like 25 years, and I just quit.
So, Jenny, let me interrupt you here, because you actually sound a little hypomanic right now. Hypomanic means right on the border of mania, and when you're dealing with bipolar disorder, when you start moving into that more manic phase of it all, then you start feeling like Superman, and like you don't need anything, and you can do everything. And so the question on the board here is, it says your family wants you to stay on your medication, but you feel like God doesn't. I don't presume to speak for God, but what I can say is that God never wants us to do anything that would possibly harm ourselves. And so I want you to take your doctor's advice on this. I want you to take your therapist's advice on this, and I want you to cooperate with your treatment and do not go off your medication on your own. Because honestly, it sounds like you are in a hypomanic phase right now, and I'm a little concerned that if you did go off your medication, it would be pretty tragic. So let's make sure that you're cooperating with your treatment and you're doing whatever your treatment team says that you need to do to maintain your stability at this point. Thanks for the call, Jenny.
Jenny, thank you very, very much. 888-318-7884 is our number. And this is something I always appreciate about the work that you do. And I hope it's common to Catholic counselors, and you're fully on board with that. There's a science of psychology. There's a science of psychiatry. You don't have any sense in you that those things cancel out our spiritual or moral obligations somehow. You put the whole thing together in a holistic view. So someone like Jenny, you can take very seriously spiritual progress and great spiritual gifts without dismissing the need for proper medical care.
No, absolutely, and that's one of the things we try to do with all of our clients is to help them access both the medical as well as the psychological and the spiritual tools that they can use to overcome whatever the problems are that they're facing.
Jenny, again, thank you for the call. We go now to Michael in Arlington, Texas, listening on 910 AM. Michael, your question for Dr. Greg Popcak.
My question is that I have a fiance, we have 2 kids, and my fiance tends to get really upset real quick and agitated to the point where she actually says that several different times, I hate my life, and it just gets to the point where I don't know how to react to that. My boys are 8 and 6, and of course they're going to be young ones. They're going to not want to listen, typical kids, but everything gets on her nerves. She's full of anxiety. She's worried about everything. Sometimes her past tends to catch up with her and cause us to argue and fight.
Okay.
So, Michael, what I'm hearing is, that she feels really pretty helpless. What you're describing there, that kind of behavior, the I hate my life, that's, believe it or not, it's what you would call merging behavior. In other words, it draws people in. The natural reaction when we hear something like that is to say, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. You don't hate your life. Your life is good." We try to talk them into the what that behavior. I'm not saying she's doing this intentionally, by the way. What I'm saying is that she's unconsciously developed strategies for pulling people in when she feels vulnerable, when she feels overwhelmed, and when she feels like she can't handle it. And her behavior is just kind of screaming out, "I need you to step in and take this over for me." And that's a really unhealthy way to seek help. And so what I need you guys to do is to have some serious conversations about those things that are causing her to feel that way, and to start making some plans for addressing those problems in healthier ways, including, how she can come and seek your help when she needs it, as opposed to feeling like she has to go into this overly dramatized place where she's melting down to get your help. She doesn't trust that the people around her will be there to help her. I'm not saying that you necessarily deserve that doubt. I'm saying that I suspect her background has taught her that people won't show up for her if she just asks for help. That she has to allow herself to get to this place where she's almost breaking down before someone will notice and come in and help her. So your job is to sit down with her and really work through what are healthier ways that she can engage you early on before things are getting to the point where she can't handle it, and ask for your help and ask for your support and your guidance. Now, I also suspect that you're going to probably need some professional help here with this, because she's not going to be able to beat this entirely on her own. But just for one thing to kind of take from the call, it's really kind of working with her, not when she's in the middle of that place, but when she's far removed from that situation, to say, what can we do, honey, to help you feel like you're getting the love and support you need to manage all this stuff without you having a meltdown? And she might stare at you and blink 3 times and say, I have no idea. At which point, you call your local therapist or reach out to us at CatholicCounselors.com and you get some new tools. But maybe the two of you can work some things out together. And if you can do that, you're teaching her healthy ways to reach out for help without having to go to that dramatic place.
And that's the thing, is like I see her getting agitated and upset, and she's starting to get into that mood again, and then I step in to take care of the kids. And then
no, I'm not. I don't want you to. But you're not here. I don't want you to step in and do that. I want you to talk to her before she gets to that place, and say, what do we need to do ahead of time to make sure you don't go to that place? Because you just stepping in and taking care of the kids, and I mean that's good. It gets through the crisis, but it doesn't solve the problem. The problem has to be addressed long before she gets to that stage, where you're sitting down with her and saying, we need to talk about different ways for you to seek help from me other than saying that you hate your life. Because that's sending a terrible message to our kids, and that's not helping you learn from anything and be able to do better in the future. So let's talk about a plan for making this work better the next time we fall into this situation. If you find that she's not able to have that conversation, then it's time to get some professional help.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. And if you want to review what Dr. Popcak has said, you can. We post these immediately after. You can just listen to it again and pick out the the parts that will be helpful to you. I appreciate the call. Dr. Greg Popcak is our guest. He and his wife, Lisa, host More to Life mornings on except if you're in Sydney, Australia, then it's 10 p.m. that it comes on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. You can find out if you're thinking, you know what he said resonated with me. I think we need to talk with a counselor. You can go to CatholicCounselors.com and look up what they do, or you can find his books pretty much wherever books are sold. The one we've been focusing on today is Unworried, A Life Without Anxiety. And the thing is, you actually believe in this. You believe you can have a life without anxiety, Dr. Popcak.
Well, again, you'll have concerns. Everyone has concerns, but anxiety, what happens when we allow our concerns to separate us from God, from the love and support of others, and from our own best selves. So we can reconnect with those resources. We can address those concerns without anxiety.
Thank you, Dr. Popcak. Thanks very much. It's always a great pleasure to have you on here. You're, in addition to all the other stuff, you're fun to have on.
I try. Thanks, Cy. Yeah. It's always great to be here.
Well, good. I hope we'll do it again before too long. Hey, next hour, you know what? There's a lot of unclear thinking in our world today, and that unclear thinking makes our social life much more difficult. As a matter of fact, it leads to a lot of evils in the world. Part of the reason that the Catholic Church has always encouraged the study of philosophy. We've got a great book, a great author, all about philosophy and how to get yourself in touch with the great philosophical traditions without breaking your brain or falling asleep. We'll do that right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and it's such a great time of decision. We're involved here in the U.S. in a great moment of decision, but the whole world just seems like we're being offered different paths and we have to choose. And I think I think that the way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to come to some understanding about things before you make decisions about things, and understanding is woefully lacking. As a matter of fact, it almost seems at times that there's a lack of connection to reality. Even one might say a little bit of a war against reality going on. So how do we get ourselves in touch with reality? Well, that's what philosophy's for. And there's a great new book from Ignatius Press out called Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living, from the man who is our guest today, Jesuit priest Father Robert McTeigue. I'll tell you a little bit about him. He's a member of the Maryland province of the Society of Jesus. He's lectured worldwide on philosophy and theology. He's a member of the National Ethics Committee of the Catholic Medical Association. He's the host and producer of the radio show The Catholic Current on the Station of the Cross. And there's more to find out about him. He's also a columnist over at Aleteia. You probably know that website. Father Robert McTeigue, thanks for being with us.
Hey, glad to be with you guys. I look forward to helping you do your good work today.
Okay, so philosophy books, they're snoozers. They're long. They use a lot of big fancy words. They put me to sleep. I can't get to the end of them. Is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with philosophy books? And is this one going to solve those problems?
Well, yes to all of the above. We'll give you the best.
Thank you, Father. Yes.
You've probably been habituated, like so many of us, to think in small sound bites, to participate in short attention span theater. I mean, one of the reasons why I knew I needed to get out of teaching was I got tired of interrupting my lecture with the observation, this is the part where you write down what I say, and people looking at me either in bewilderment or indignation.
Yeah.
There's also something wrong with merely academic, mostly pedantic philosophy. My late great mentor in philosophy, Paul Weiss, said philosophers let theories get in the way of what they and everyone else know. So someone who's an absolute skeptic about all of reality knows who to call if his direct deposit doesn't arrive on time.
Yeah, that's right.
And sadly, most teachers haven't read Aristotle's Rhetoric. Most teachers, even most professional speakers and writers, start with, what do I want to say? That, in fact, is the last question you ask. You start with, who is my audience? What can they hear? What can they understand? What can they remember? And if you're really good, you'll ask, what do they need? And then in that small space, that's what you put. So I knew that I needed to teach philosophy to mostly unwilling undergrads. It was a captive audience. I wanted them to be a benefited audience. So I say, look, people out there want to eat your soul and harm your loved ones. You can be prepared or be surprised. If you listen to me, I'll keep you from getting mugged. And that's what lined them up. And I would help them to become anti-relativist ninjas in a matter of weeks. So everything in that book is battle-tested for 20 years in the classroom. I know what works.
So it's fascinating to me that the appeal that they get is that there are people who are and not all of these people are human that attack them and want to tear them away from what's good, what's right, what's good for them, all of that, and the preparation, I suppose. And I get this from your book, Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living, is it doesn't mean you have to master every lie. You have to have a basic mastery of the truth, and that will prepare you to face lies.
Right. Yes. The elevator pitch of the book is this. This is the book that in one volume can teach you to be a lie detector, a truth detector, a lie refuter, and a truth promoter. It gives you basic skills, and it gives you a set of tools. It gives you a map and a compass so you don't get lost, and that when someone presents something to you as this is true and good, or denounce that because it's evil and wicked, you immediately are able to evaluate it, see whether or not it's wrong, where it's wrong, why it's wrong, how to refute it, and what to offer as a replacement.
If you have questions for Father Robert McTeigue about philosophy and about the role of philosophy in our life, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. If there are particular philosophical questions, moral, ethical questions that you would like help with, 888-318-7884 is our number, 888-31-TRUTH. You have an incredible cast on the endorsing this book, people saying wonderful things about it, including, most people know, Dr. Peter Kraft or Father Robert Spitzer, very supportive of your work. And we talked about this idea of being able to recognize the truth. It seems to me that the public discussion we often have is, who can I trust? Am I a CNN person, an MSNBC person, a Fox person? But not enough discussion about, how do I become the kind of person who can recognize the truth?
Right. Well, I draw an inspiration from a book by Richard Marcinko, who founded the SEAL Team 6, the very elite SEAL team that did a hostage rescue and so on. And he said, when you safely learn to shoot, first you learn not to shoot yourself in the foot, and then you find where the target is, and you aim safely at the target, and you find the target. He says, eventually you got to get to the point where finding the target and nailing the target is one action. So how did I do that with the students? I would give them every day what I called it was an exercise called a daily depredation. And I would take a paragraph from the internet, an editorial, an essay, and so on. I said, take a couple minutes, read it, think about it, write a few lines, evaluate it in light of what we've been talking about in class. And we talk about, what their evaluations are. And I said, now I'm going to go through it line by line, word by word, and show you what you missed. I'm going to train the eye of your intellect to spot where the weaknesses are, where the sleight of hand is. Watch this hand, well, this hand is grabbing your wallet.
Right.
And eventually, they could get to a pretty high degree of sophistication relatively quickly.
888-318-7884, especially I would think if you're a parent or a teacher yourself and you'd like to help to protect young minds from the really horrific deception that is all around us these days. Right. This is a book for you, Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living, from Ignatius Press. And you can talk with its author, Father Robert McTeigue, at 888-318-7884. Who would you like to... I'd like to put this book in their hands. Who would you like that to be?
Oh my God! Anyone who can read English, honestly.
Okay.
No, it's a universal book because it touches upon universal truths. Look, if you're homeschooling, or if you're not homeschooling, but you're a parent and you said, hey, my kid's becoming a junior in high school, he's going off to college, he's going off to the workplace. I want to make sure that we've read this together, so he's not being sent out naked like Saint Sebastian. If you are teaching at a college seminary where guys have to be immersed in philosophy before getting theology, I would want that. Priests who run pre-theology programs for guys who come into priesthood as a second career never had a lot of philosophy. Also, I did my homework. I know what a university professor is looking for, so I made sure all of the necessary intellectual apparatus is there, so a professional could look at this and say, this is sound, I can trust it in the classroom. And for people who are in a hurry, who know that something's wrong, who are in the faith, who want to know the truth, and don't have the opportunity to read philosophy for 40 years as I have. I've done a lot of the homework for you. I don't say, use the book as the measure. If it disagrees with Father McTeigue, don't listen to it. No, here is the tools. Do it on your own. This is the philosophical version of teaching you how to fish rather than giving you a fish.
And if you'd like some help learning how to fish, or maybe someone in your life that you would like some help answering basic questions about what it is to be a human being, what it is to know the truth and be able to distinguish the truth, how we do those things, what are the acts that bring us to those things, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. I have to take a quick break, and then already the lines are beginning to fill up, so go ahead and dial 888-318-7884. And if you're on the line, just hang on. We're going to get to you in 1 minute and let you talk with Father Robert McTeigue, the author of Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living. It's the new book, and I already know this because I've talked to people over there. They're very excited about this book over at Ignatius Press. Before I send you off to the break, I want you to know we've got a free ebook for you called Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment. You can same place we always have these free ebooks for you. Just go over to shop.catholic.com, look for the button, the free ebook button, click it, and you get the free ebook. That's not that hard to do. Shop.catholic.com, free ebook on demons, deliverance, and discernment right now at shop.catholic.com.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Exorcisms on Monday and Rapture on Wednesday. That's the calendar this week on Catholic Answers Focus. The official exorcist of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis joins us on Monday to discuss the life of an exorcist, what training he gets, and then some stuff that's probably too scary to mention here. Then on Wednesday, we ask Carlo Broussard about the end times, particularly the rapture. Is there any chance that rapture might be real? Catholic Answers Focus is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Get all the details and past shows at CatholicAnswersFocus.com.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
There is tremendous power in prayer because when we acknowledge that we don't have the power, but God does, things then begin to move for our good. Remember Matthew 19:26. But Jesus looked at them and said to them, "With men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible." Now that's power.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm delighted to see the lines filling up with questions about philosophy because this is one of the great things about being Catholic is the embrace of truth wherever it can be found. And that's why Catholics look all the way back to the time, all the way back to the time of St. Paul, certainly, but certainly figures like Justin Martyr in the Roman Empire. Taking philosophy seriously as a tool for investigating the world and as a tool for understanding revelation, where it's something I think we should be very, very proud of as Catholics, is the Catholic philosophical tradition. And Father Robert McTague, whose name I pronounced it right that time, Nick, right? Nick's going to keep score of how many times I pronounce it right. Father Robert McTague, a Jesuit priest and the author of the brand new book, Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living, from Ignatius Press, here to take your calls. Father, shall we go to calls, or did you want to add any more before we let people start interrogating you?
No, let's do it. Let's take calls.
All right, let's go to John in New Jersey, listening on Domestic Church Radio. John, thank you so much for your call. Your question for Father.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on. My question is, as Catholics, what's the right way to approach reading some of the pagan philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, or Cicero? Or maybe a better way to ask it is, what are some wrong ways to approach reading those texts?
Thank you, John.
Okay, that's a good question. We, ever since St. Paul, drove through Athens on his way to Rome, the Church has had a long-standing relationship with philosophy. And the way to read the pagans is the way that St. Thomas Aquinas read the pagans. Look for what's true and good and put the rest aside. And some of it can be improved upon. So many of the great doctors of the Church were formed and informed by pagans. Augustine and Plato, for example, certainly Aristotle and Aquinas. We don't have to be afraid of reading anyone. Now, in the Middle Ages, around the time of Aquinas, there were some people who said, hey, Aristotle seems to know everything about everything, so we're just going to trim Revelation to fit in with Aristotle. Not only did Christians do that, Muslims did it as well. And Aquinas said, no, don't do that. So it's an unfortunate metaphor. He kind of baptized Aristotle. So you could read anyone to see what's true. You can learn about, there's another whole set of errors. I didn't even know you could be wrong that way. duly noted. And every now and again, you'll find tools that you can use and build upon. I mean, my own great mentor in philosophy, to whom I dedicated this book, he wasn't Catholic, but he was fascinated with Catholic theology, and we developed a set of tools from philosophy that help to illuminate theology. So I think it would be to our detriment to not read the pagans. We just have to read them as intelligent Catholics.
What do you think, John?
That sounds great. Yeah, and I guess the second half of that are there any errors though to stay away from besides, I guess, having too close of a mind? It sounds like might be one of the errors you'd suggest.
Right. For Aristotle, did Aristotle get some things wrong? Yeah, what he said about slavery, yeah, that's obviously wrong. Plato's relationship between soul and body was suggestive, but that's not quite right. As you read the pagans, keep one eye on common sense and another eye on the truths that Christ entrusted to his church, and you'll be fine.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much. Does the I wonder if the encouragement that Jesus gives to, like, for example, knock and it'll be open to you, seek and you'll find, ask and it'll be answered. If this applies in any way to those philosophers, maybe like Siddhartha Gautama or like Confucius or like Socrates and Aristotle and Plato, the ones you were just discussing, that in some ways they were seeking honestly and they did find many true things.
Right, they did find many true things. They did not find the personification, truth itself, who is a person, who is Christ our Lord. I mean, my mentor in philosophy, Paul Weiss, went to Harvard as an agnostic Jew and was making a career for himself in symbolic logic, studied under Alfred North Whitehead. And then at Harvard in the 1920s, inexplicably, there was the great French Catholic scholar Etienne Gilson. And Gilson said, they're teaching philosophy dishonestly at Harvard. That in the beginning there was Plato and Aristotle, and then nothing happened for 2,000 years, and then René Descartes just emerges out of nowhere.
Yes, just ignore Christendom, in other words.
Right, and so Weiss read the medievals under the tutelage of Etienne Gilson, and he said it was Saint Bonaventure and his little work, the Itinerarium, Mind's Road to God, that convinced him of the reality of the transcendent. So here's this agnostic Jew in the Ivy League in the 1920s, gave up a very promising career in symbolic logic to study metaphysics.
Wow.
And so he befriended Gilson, he befriended Maritain. He was influential in my vocation. He was certainly influential in Father Spitzer. Little side note on Father Spitzer, why I asked him to write for the book. Father Spitzer and I were in doctoral studies together at Catholic University when I was a layman, and we were both writing under Dr. Paul Weiss. And Father Spitzer helped me to find my vocation. I'm a Jesuit because of the influence. So all those years later, I called it, hey, could you do that? So even though he didn't come to Christ directly, I think Dr. Weiss had an openness to the transcendent that only came from reading Catholics, and that desire to the truth prompted him to live a very disciplined life. I tell my students, if I believed in reincarnation, which of course I don't, I would insist that Paul Weiss was the reincarnation of Socrates.
Really?
Yeah.
Father Robert McTague is our guest. The brand new book from Ignatius Press that they're very excited about over there at Ignatius Press is called Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living. I am going to go back to the calls, but that call prompts me to want to ask this question, and I want to get this answer from you. There are philosophers, and I'm in my mind right now. I have the figure of Friedrich Nietzsche. That you might say it's like you can engage with Nietzsche, and Nietzsche can teach you many important things. But is there ever a time where you say you're not ready for that to someone? Don't go into that, because that prepare yourself.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough, Father.
True story just from my own life. When I was a sophomore in college and had not yet read Nietzsche, a professor told me a story of she came home from class and found her high school age daughter reading Nietzsche, and she yanked it out of his hands and said, "You can't read Nietzsche till you read what he's reacting against first."
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So Nietzsche is the great contrarian What is he contradicting? You can't understand what the limits and merits of the modern mind until you get to the limits and merits of the classical mind.
Yes. Okay.
And that interplay of the classical and modern mind is an essential motif in Catholic intellectual life.
Right. And might you say that about some of the modern, many would even bristle at the name philosophy or philosopher for what they're doing, but the modern atheists, where there's nothing to fear, for example, I think in the writing of Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins, but I wouldn't recommend everyone read it because you can be vulnerable to it.
Well, yes. Well, again, going back to Father Spitzer said if you're going to pick one century where science was most congenial to the faith, you'd definitely want to pick the 21st century. So we don't have to be shy in front of scientific atheism. I did an article, and I'll tell you a few years ago, called "There Used to Be a Better Class of Atheists," and there's a picture of Bertrand Russell there. Again, Gilson said, most atheists aren't really atheists; they're just very bad theologians. And they're bad theologians because they haven't been raised up in a proper philosophical culture.
Yeah.
But as I said, you don't punch above your weight class. Master the basics first. And my take on Nietzsche is this. Nietzsche is a genius and a madman. It's like talking with a brilliant man at a cocktail party after he said too much to drink.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you don't want to dismiss him because he's obviously brilliant. On the other hand, you don't want to give him the car keys because he said too much to drink.
Right.
But there's a lot to learn from him. And in the book, I make clear in the chapter on worldviews, the only really honest options are Thomas Aquinas and Nietzsche. Full-blown theism or full-blown nihilism, and everything else is just hand-waving and whistling past the cemetery.
Thank you, Father. Let's go to Michelle in Lincoln, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Michelle, your question for Father Robert McTague. I know you're there, Michelle. Don't hide from us. All right. Okay. So somebody pushed the wrong button. You're there now, Michelle, right?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can. Yes. Now, go ahead with your question for Father.
Great. I apologize ahead of time for kind of fumbling with this question, but what I want to know is how do we address or answer, people who question anything as truth? Like when, we look at the grass and we say the grass is green, they're like, well, that's maybe not green, maybe it's red, but we just say it's green. And to extend that further into, the very heavy topic right now of gender identity, it's even becoming taboo to say, you're genetically male or genetically female. So how do we respond to something like that when they're always like, well, it's just human constructed truth. There is no truth.
All right, Michelle, thank you.
You go up and whisper in his ear, dude, your fly's open. If he looks, he's a fraud. Okay.
Now, I get that, Father, but you're going to have to explain that.
Okay, look, the idea of, oh my gosh, we can't really know anything, we're really skeptical, et cetera, et cetera. He knows that if he steps on a rusty nail, he's going to ask for a tetanus shot and not motor oil. Why is that? Why is it, look, every semester I'd have some 18-year-old drawing upon all of his life experience to say, well, like Father, like you have like your own reality, and I have my own reality. And I said, well, why is it in your reality and my reality we both fall out the window the same rate of speed? And why did you pick a reality where drinking too much beer makes you stupid and the cutoff for an A in this class is a 95? That's poor planning on your part. No one can really live that way. Take his wallet and say, I'm calling it mine. How shall we resolve this? No, it breaks down. That kind of universal skepticism breaks down on a practical level very easily.
But so a person like Michelle, however, because you will have people really be mean to you. You can't say that about gender. That makes you a genderphobe or what, I don't know, whatever the latest terminology is, but some horrible name that they've come up with.
Right.
And so even though she's right, what do you have to do? Just stick to your guns and take the abuse?
Well, as Catholics, we want to win souls more than we want to win arguments. And, I taught rhetoric. Aristotle's view of rhetoric was the art of persuasion. We have to avoid the rationalist fallacy, which states, if only I explain myself clearly enough, people will understand and agree. That's a trail of tears, as you know. People are more likely to hear what you have to say if they know that you really are a decent human being. And sometimes, though, you've got to make an example of folks in public who are leading people astray. Sometimes you've got to humiliate the Pied Piper so he doesn't leave the kids off the cliff. So some famous musician starlet said that she was pansexual. And I wanted to ask her, well, when you have sex, do you worry about getting anybody pregnant? No, you don't. And why is it I was born that way is the absolute mic drop answer for sexual preference, but I was born that way is just a conversation starter for gender. Just point out the contradictions.
Michelle, thank you so much for the call. Our number is 888-318-7884. Father Robert McTeigue is our guest. We're trying to help the world think more clearly, and he's doing a great job with the book, Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living. More with Father McTeigue right after this.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
If you spend any time on Twitter, Facebook, or mainstream media, you're probably familiar with the litany of slogans that skeptics employ to rescue you from the foolish belief that God exists. The constant onslaught seems to leave people with the idea that they have no alternative but to embrace atheism. How can a Christian respond? In One Less God Than You, John DeRosa breaks down 20 of the most common atheist challenges and shows you how to craft effective answers. Atheism is more aggressive and widespread than ever. Read One Less God Than You and prepare yourself to respond with the joyful truth that God is real. To get your copy of One Less God Than You, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Fear can be a part of everyone's life.
Is there something you're fearful of and have a hard time letting it go?
That's what we'll talk about tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on most of these EWTN stations.
Now, back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father Robert McTeigue is our guest. The book is Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living from Ignatius Press. It's out now from Ignatius Press. If you'd like to have further exposure to Father McTeigue, he has a column and many past columns available for you to peruse as well over at aletheia.com, I think is aletheia.com.
.org.
.org. Okay.
Aletheia.org.
aletheia.org. And you can also listen to his radio program over at the Station of the Cross. It's called The Catholic Current. Father McTeigue, thank you again for being with us. I am going to go back to the phone, so if you'd like to dial, and wow, they just keep coming, 888-318-7884. We'll do our very best to get you on. I do want to confront you, however, Father, as a minister of the Christian faith, with the objection that, look, we have the Bible, we don't need all of this. If we would just follow the Bible, we don't need all this philosophy and and whatnot. How do you address that person?
Okay, that's a very old objection that goes back at least to the time of Tertullian in the 4th century. What has Athens to do with Jerusalem? What does the academy to do with the church? Philosophy gives you an extra set of tools that you'd be foolish not to use. For example, philosophy can say, hey, you guys, you want to talk about the Trinity? I can't tell you whether or not the Trinity is true, but I can tell you the categories of nature and person is going to give you a lot of mileage. Hey, philosophy says to theology, to the church, you guys want to talk about the Eucharist? I can't tell you whether or not the Eucharist is real or not, but I can tell you the categories of substance and accident is going to help you think more clearly and express yourself better. Philosophy helps faith do its job better, and also can give you protection, can give you intellectual Kevlar against the cheap shots that if you believe in God, it's no different from believing in, Elvis fathered my love child.
Yeah, I hope somebody didn't just tune in on that last sentence, but that's going to hurt your reputation, Father. But fair enough. Okay, thank you, Father. And we do use those terms. Even really complex philosophical terms are right there in the creed. When we say consubstantial, you got to know your philosophy to know what consubstantial means.
Yes, you do. And what I do in the book is, this is a book of philosophy. It certainly is. I borrow categories from theology because theology can help philosophy to do its work. When I talk about what is a human person, I talk about sign, symbol, and sacrament. And I draw upon Catholic vocabulary and imagination to talk about the body as the sacramental vessel of the person. You don't need to be baptized to understand the concepts. So philosophy and theology, faith and reason, interacting, both help each other to do their jobs better.
Is it kind of fun to have it it's almost like a little bit of superpower, of being well versed in philosophy? It makes you a better conversationalist. You can solve problems that other people find.
There's so much more that you can do with your life. You're not fooled as often. You don't get your intellectual pocket picked as often. You're immune to the nonsense floating in the air that other people fall prey to. It's a lot of work. And sometimes you also see the gloom and the depth of things more readily and more profoundly than other people do. It's a two-edged sword, but I won't leave home without it.
Let's go to Heather in Colorado, listening on 1060 AM. Heather, you are on next with our guest, Father Robert McTague. Your question, please.
Yes. Hello, Father. Thank you for this. Is a great topic.
Thank you.
So I have a 10-year-old who is very curious, and she's asking some really great questions surrounding your faith. And I am looking through resources for her to kind of get her started thinking about, the philosophy of things. Because I think a better understanding and reasoning around God will help her with some of her questions. I'm learning a lot myself, but I didn't know if there are resources for younger people who are expressing some interest in their areas.
Wonderful.
Well, Aristotle would say start with logic. Your 10-year-old doesn't have a lot of life experience. You're not going to give her profound moral questions. But if you can teach her the basics of how to think through a problem, solve puzzles together, instill that kind of curiosity, let her read mystery stories, go through where the detective found the clues, etc. Get yourself a book called the 1 Minute Aquinas. That can be helpful. In some of the earlier books of Peter Kreeft, Socrates meets this person, or Socrates talks about abortion. In a very lighthearted way, Dr. Kreeft can give a person even as young as 10 a sense of how to ask questions and how to pursue the truth relentlessly. This book is probably inaccessible to your 10-year-old, but I bet you if you read it and talk with her, I think that would be the way to go. Also, unfortunately, they took his videos off of YouTube. But if you go to BitChute.com, Stefan Molyneux has a series of conversations with his 11-year-old daughter where they talk about Karl Marx and they talk about utilitarianism. So you can do it. You have to be prepared. But for now, have your child solve logic puzzles for sure.
Okay, Heather?
Great. Oh, thank you very much. That was very helpful. We actually have had discussions about Marx lately. So
You got it.
Okay.
You know, Heather, I have to just say I'm very, very happy that you called, because I have, in my experience over the last decade or so, talking with parent after parent says they are shocked to wake up and find their 10 or 11 or 12-year-old is an atheist because they saw some stuff on YouTube, or they heard the conversations at school, and they just think, I can't believe in God. And it's a crisis. I mean, an absolute crisis for that 10 or 11-year-old or 12-year-old, in some cases a 13-year-old. But the parent is shocked to find that this is the case. And so I'm very glad that you called. And I hope that parents of 7, 8, 9-year-olds are listening, because sometimes the battle is over by the time they're 10, or at least it's over for a long time.
One more resource. Father Spitzer has something called the Magis Institute.
Yeah.
MAGIS. And there's all sorts of links there about faith and evolution and faith and science, because your kid might come home from school and some teacher says, well, only dumb people are religious because science, and this is just a treasure trove of material there.
Magiscenter.com is the place to go. Magiscenter.com.
Yeah, look, Catholics don't have to be afraid of anybody. We don't. And this book it can give you that set of tools where you can prove it, that we don't have to be afraid of anyone.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you very much.
We'll go now to Daniel in Deming, New Mexico, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Daniel, thank you very much for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Father Robert McTeigue.
Yes, it's really two questions. The basic question I want to ask is, could you briefly tell us the difference between philosophy and metaphysics? And then the other thing that I wanted to talk, and I'm amazed that two people have addressed that to quite a degree with you, and that is teaching children. I'm going to be teaching confirmation level 1 for about 12-year-olds, and I'm convinced that one of the basic reasons children don't understand some things is because of the use of $80 words. So,
the words are more expensive there in New Mexico, and here in California we call them $10 words, but in New Mexico they're going for $80. Father, this seems to be something people really want to know. How are we going to address children with this? And do address that $80 word question, because that you tackle that in the book too.
Right. Okay. Well, first of all, to make a distinction between philosophy and metaphysics, philosophy is an ordered pursuit of the truth. It is a love of wisdom. Metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that attends to questions about the real. It's an attempt at offering a systematic account of the real. What is really real? Is there something that's real that's not physical? What is our relationship to time? So metaphysics is the foundational discipline of philosophy, and then others build on that. But again, we've got to prepare our kids, because they're being exposed to stuff that I wasn't exposed to when I was 10 or 12 years old. I didn't have, there wasn't an internet for me to be exposed to, and we didn't have the sickness of postmodernism afflicting our schools either. You've got to appeal to their moral imagination. You've got to get them to fall in love with the idea of discovering truths by means of story. Get a copy of John Senior's book called The Death of Christian Culture, because in the back of that is a list of 1,000 books, mostly fiction, that you should be reading with your kid between the age of 5 and 18. Cultivate their moral imagination, and then teach them how to reflect on those stories. Now, regarding the $80 word question, if Dr. Peter Kraft and I were here and we were going to do all sorts of inside baseball, I could throw the buzzwords around, and that's fine. It's inaccessible to everybody else. I don't accuse a doctor of showing off when he gives the proper name to my elbow when I call it my funny bone. And sometimes you need tools with that degree of precision. tools that you ordinarily don't need at home. What you want to be aware of is not sophisticated vocabulary. You want to be aware of jargon. You want to be aware of people using words in such a way that they don't have to make a commitment for what they're saying or not saying, for what they're asserting or denying. That's what you want to be on guard against.
Okay, Daniel?
Okay.
You said
yes,
that...
and then the other thing I'd like to, if I may.
I apologize, Daniel. Go ahead.
Sure. I'd like to talk with my grandchildren and my children about all sorts of things. About I'm really very basically I have a level of knowledge of philosophy, but I learned so much from my grandparents. They would teach things using ordinary life. And that way I would understand more about truth and whatnot. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. You're doing good work. God bless you.
Yes, God bless you. And Marie, Daniel goes on he can call every day list with the woman from Kentucky, the people with the really cool accents that we want to hear every day. He's one of them. So you can call every day. We'll take a quick break. Be right back with more with Father Robert McTeigue on his new book, Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living. It's brand new from Ignatius Press.
Bringing you the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
St. Paul's street evangelization isn't like other evangelism you might have seen on the streets. We don't yell, and we don't force anyone to pay attention to us. Instead, St. Paul's street evangelization is committed to presenting a positive, passionately Catholic presence to a world hungry for truth. For more information, or to start a chapter of your own, go to www.streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com. It's time to do our part.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
You know, I have never seen women who want to be equal absolutely degrading themselves. And yet the media degrades your nature, your beauty as a woman, your goodness. Let us pray. At some point, our dear Lord touches their hearts.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking philosophy, and I'd love to recommend this book to you, and will and gladly do recommend this book to you if you have a teenager. You know, we always get the call from the person, especially when we ask, well, what can we pray for you for? The most common thing, it's not cancer, it's not heart disease, it's not war and peace, it's my children have left the church, will you pray for my children? By far the most common thing people, and we have to defend them before they head off to college. And we live in a world now where so many do go to college. You know, it's not just 2% or something, but so many go to college. And they are abused there. They're intellectually abused there. And this gives them the defense. It's a key. So the book is called Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living. Father Robert McTeigue, will you agree with my characterization that what's happening at universities and colleges is intellectual abuse in many cases?
Oh, yes. And this book is meant to boost your mental and moral immune system. This is your portable BS detector. This is the Geiger counter for nonsense. Right? And it also gives you a set of tools that can become mental habits so that you can learn. I mean, you can even learn from a fool if you know what to look for. But in terms of the mental and moral abuse, very often you've got professors who are bullies, or professors who are ideologues, or who give a very truncated, distorted view of history and of truth, and they're trying to sell you a bill of goods rather than trying to liberate you. You know, when I was teaching medical ethics, and I would say, hey, we're going to talk about real medical ethics, and latex doesn't work like magic. It's not a talisman. And the pill is more consequential than taking Tic Tac. And they said, oh, Father, we're tired of hearing this stuff. We want to hear the other side. And I said, this is the other side. You're surrounded by the side all the time.
Right.
You tell me you haven't heard enough voices urging you to promiscuity? Really? That's your argument?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So
You know,
you really have to go in with your guard up.
I feel, Father, sometimes like these universities could get away with it by saying, well, that's religion and abusing people of religion. But now they've gone to the point where they're abusing science, where they're saying, well, science is racist, or somehow it's bad science. If you say that we're a sexually dimorphic species, then that's bad science. And I feel like,
or if 2 + 2 = 4 means you're a hater. And,
right. And I maybe there's a little resentment in me as a religious person that, oh, you had to wait until these people started attacking science before you'd take it seriously. But by God, in the name of the Lord, take it seriously for whatever reason. So.
I tell a story of it's a Midwestern state college that was having a museum and honoring modern art, and postmodern art. And postmodern is supposed to be ironic and whimsical, and there are doors that open into brick walls and staircases that don't go anywhere, et cetera, et cetera. But they couldn't go in the building and occupy it until they got a certificate of safe occupancy from the engineer.
Yeah.
This is an example
Right.
of letting theories get in the way of what they and everyone else know. Right? The person who thinks that 2 + 2 = 4 means you're a hater, you don't want your pharmacist to believe that as he's dosing out your meds, right?
No, especially if I told you the
the-
meds that I'm on, Father. You do not want to messing those up.
Well, to quote a famous person, who am I to judge? So, yeah.
888-318-7884, the number. Anonymous caller in Seattle, Washington. I apologize, Anonymous. I feel like we've made you wait, but you're welcome here, and your question for Father.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, Father. I've had awesome respect for Dr. Peter Kraft. I've written him hard copies a number of times, and the man has taken the grace to answer back. Here's the shocker. 53 years ago, right after my father died suddenly around Christmas time, I picked up A.K. Homo, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Will to Power, Hammer of the Gods, Beyond Good and Evil, and Human All Too Human.
But not the Antichrist.
Ate it up like popcorn.
Okay.
Now, I'm in my mid-60s now. And Nietzsche, yes, he was a genius, and yet he died a screaming mad lunatic in Weimar in 1900.
Yeah.
Right.
His stuff is starting to make sense to me again, and here's why. When Nietzsche said, Zarathustra, shout, do they not know that God is dead? He was basically saying, by the way I understand it, and you can refute me if you have to, that God is not reliable, dependable, or trustworthy, so we've got to do it ourselves. Now, I regard Hitchens and Dawkins and Harris as rubbish, and I'm being polite, but this is a family Christian show.
Okay, I appreciate
But-
that.
But I have to say, Anonymous, it's fascinating because we rarely get a caller calling to come to the defense of Nietzsche. And you're actually not alone in that. There are many Christian scholars who take Nietzsche quite seriously and profit from it greatly. But that doesn't mean we don't have a problem with Nietzsche. Father, go ahead.
Yeah. Let me offer my take on it. Here's where Nietzsche, I think, was right. Not in refuting God, not in refuting the Christ, but in refuting the caricature of the church. One columnist was talking what he called the business of churchianity, what a former student of mine referred to as the status quo ordo. The idea that everything is fine, just make sure that you put your envelope in the basket, and if you've warmed the pew for 45 minutes every Sunday, then the master of the universe owes you. If that's what theism and Christianity is, then Nietzsche is right to mock it, just like Kierkegaard is right to mock it. Kierkegaard said theology paints its face and tarts itself up and sits by the window and hoping that philosophy will come notice. People who should know better in positions of responsibility in the church realize that their brand of the business of churchianity is dying demographically and financially. The season of COVID tide accelerated that process. Now they're clutching at straws of relevance, trying to show what different ways that they're woke, and then they're astounded when their statues get pulled down and their churches get vandalized. So to the degree that we're dealing with a facade of the Christ, then Nietzsche is rightly a bomb thrower. Right. But Nietzsche's arms are too short to box with God, to mix metaphors just a little bit.
Anonymous, I'm so grateful for your call, because it's wonderful to have someone who takes philosophy seriously call and speak with a philosopher. Our guest is Father Robert McTeigue, and his new book is called Real Philosophy for Real People. Did you want to follow up with your defense of the madman, so to speak?
It's not so much, well, my faith is crumbling.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I moved to Seattle 7 years ago to work in the aviation business, and that's all in ashes. And I mean, I'm looking back at my life, a lot of things I've tried to do to improve my life relationally, emotionally, et cetera, professionally, have all met with disaster. So I'm starting to think, was Nietzsche right? Throw God out because you can't depend on him. You can't rely on him.
Oh.
He's not going to be there for you. He'll be there for somebody else, but he won't be there for me. So figured, all right, enough's enough. He says, you're on your own. All right, I'm just going to make the best of it what I can and hope and pray for his mercy on my last days. That's
well, I'm sorry for your struggle and your pain. Since you're a fan of Dr. Peter Kraft, he's written about Job, the book of Job, and he's written about suffering and evil. Speaking as someone who witnessed the violent death of his best friend 2 weeks before undergraduate graduation, I myself have had my nose rubbed in the problem of evil and suffering. And here's the nexus point. Here's the absolute litmus test. Either everything the church proclaims about Christ crucified and risen is absolutely true, or life is probably a bad joke that shouldn't have happened. Those are the two only honest options. So I ask you to go back to your sources, go back to those times when you did discover, where you did find God to be faithful, and spend some time reading people who suffered as you have and came out the other side. And I will keep you in prayer. I'm glad you called.
And thank you so much for the call. And this, I hope that you'll continue to call again. I have very limited things that I can send you, but because you're experiencing this crisis of faith and you know that it's a crisis of faith, I would like to send you a book of reflections on the words of Jesus, because there's nothing in the world that can comfort and help us like the words of Jesus properly understood. So if you'd like to stay on the line and give us your address, I'd like to send you a book from Father Sebastian Walsh called Secrets from Heaven, Hidden Treasures of Faith in the Parables of and Conversations of Jesus. They really are treasures, and perhaps they'll bring you some comfort and some reinvigoration of your faith, because it's quite serious to face a crisis of faith, and we take it seriously, and we don't want to be in any way dismissive. And as you said, Father, Nietzsche is so powerful as a critic of the falsities about God and about phoniness about God, but that doesn't mean that the truth about God is wrong, or that God himself is a phony.
Right. And, in raising the problem of evil, you're already pointing towards its solution. If evil is really evil, it has to fall short of a standard of absolute goodness. And if evil overwhelms the good, then good wasn't very good, in which case we don't have the problem of evil anymore. We only have the fact of pain and no reason to complain. Right? So, so in raising the problem of evil, you're already pointing toward its solution. But it sounds like he doesn't need so much philosophy right now as grace and a kind listening friend.
Yeah, and Anonymous, please, I hope you will call again. Father Robert McTeigue is our guest. You can hear him on the radio over at the Station of the Cross, of which we are big fans here. They do great work at the Station of the Cross, and the radio program is called The Catholic Current. And you can also read his material at aleteia.org. I messed that up before, aleteia.org. And I do want to recommend again, Real Philosophy for Real People, Tools for Truthful Living. If there's a problem of our times, it seems to be a rebellion against reality, and this is a way to work your way. Is that fair enough to say, Father? And this is a way to help you pass that?
Right. Yes, we are in an atmosphere of anti-reality. The climate change we're suffering is it getting warmer or colder, but we've given up on truth, and we got to push back on that.
And especially for that young person in your life, the teenager, this book, they can read it, they can process it. Maybe you can read it with them and send them off with some protection as they go out to face the attacks of the world. Father, I would love it if you would give us your blessing before we go. May we have your blessing?
Sure. Through the intercession of St. Ignatius Loyola, may God's peace reign in your heart. May Almighty God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Go in peace, and please pray for me.
Amen. Thank you so much, Father. We will, and we appreciate the time with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Very good.
Tomorrow we're going to come back here and do this again, God willing, and it's open forum. You can ask anything you want. Anonymous, you can call back. If you're on the People with Great Accents list, you can call every day, so you can call again. And if you have any question about the Catholic faith, we'd love to hear from you then when we do this again on Catholic Answers Live.